And welcome back to another edition of On the Board Sports. I am your host, Will Chiarucci, a.k.a. Will C, coming to you from Gotham Podcast Studios in Manhattan, New York. And listen, what more can you want? It's November. It's 1 week away from Thanksgiving, ladies and gentlemen. And listen, the holidays are here. They're upon us, and the weather's getting colder. So on that note, it's hockey season, folks, ladies and gentlemen. And I'm joined by my one and only co-host, Shawn Thomas, a.k.a. Shawn T. Shawn, how are you?
Well, I am doing awesome with a capital A, like you say. And, Will, this is my birthday week. I turned 31 Monday, so I'm in a very chipper mood, man.
Absolutely, man. Happy birthday to you. 31 and feeling fine, right, to a degree?
Yes, sir. Thank you so much, man. I appreciate you.
Absolutely. Anytime, man. You're the best co-host. What more can I want? You know?
Likewise, baby.
And we also have a very special guest with us, too. Joining us via the phone is the managing editor of Islanders Insight, Associated Press contributor, AP radio contributor, radio producer, and overall, he's a good guy. I met him at plenty of games and at the Offside Tavern with Mike Carver, talking with the one and only Christian Arnold. Christian, how are you?
I'm doing well, Will. Thanks for having me on. Shawn, happy early birthday. I hear that's 30 fun, right? 31, 30 fun?
31, 31, Christian, thank you so much. And I look forward to, having a great show. And me and Will, thank you for taking some time. Thank you so much.
Of course, happy to be here.
Absolutely, Christian. Lots to talk about today. The Islanders, they're hot right now. They're on their 15-game point streak after beating the Penguins and come from behind fashion 5-4 last night at PPG Paints Arena in Pittsburgh. And, let's lead off the show for – actually, you know what? Before we start talking about the Mike Babcock firing, Christian, how did you get into talking sports and getting into writing about sports? It's really interesting.
Yeah, so I've been covering the team for a long time now, probably nearing 10 years, which is even shocking for me to say. I started writing about the Islanders when I was 16 to 17. I was actually inspired by the original Islanders Point Blank and Chris Bott, kind of reading that on a daily basis and being like, hey, I think I could do that. So I started my own blog, my own website, and things kind of took off from there. I got credentialed by the Islanders when I was 18. My first professional hockey game that I ever covered, I was actually 17, was a Bridgeport Sound Tigers game. And I've kind of just been doing it ever since and working my way up. Wrote for New York Hockey Journal for a little bit. SNY, Islanders Point Blank, kind of coincidentally later on in my career, I've contributed to the AP, like you said, contributing to AP Radio and different outlets covering, a wide range of sports. So it is kind of an interesting road, but it's been a blast, especially the last couple of years with the Islanders, which is one of my primary beats. It's really become a fun team to be around now.
Would you say that this is probably the most fun team that you've covered since you've been doing your blogs and been working for the Associated Press in a sense?
Yeah. This Islanders team, it's a lot of fun. A lot of these guys too. I've watched them go from guys who are once in a while players to these guys being premier players in the National Hockey League. My first years, was right around a couple years after Josh Bailey had just been drafted. So I've seen him go from a guy that Islander fans have had an interesting relationship to at the beginning, and now the guy who they love. And I find it really entertaining to see the fans chanting and singing his name after every time he scores. Even when he doesn't score, singing, wanting to score a goal. I've loved the way that relationship between the fans and Josh Bailey has progressed over the last couple of years. And just seeing the way this team has transformed too has just been really something to see. From a couple of years ago under Doug Waite and Jack Capuano, and even the brief time that I covered the team when Scott Gorton was head coach, to how it's run under Barry Trotz and Lou Lamoriello. It really is something to behold, and it's a lot of fun. There's a lot of great guys in that room, a lot of great character guys, and having been around for a few coaches and a few teams and Islanders, this is probably the best to cover so far.
Absolutely, man. Breaking news though on the On the Board Sports podcast, and just seeing it now, Christian, what perfect timing for you to come on and talk about this. Mike Babcock, relieved of his duties from the Toronto Maple Leafs. A lot of emotions going on up there after starting off the year under 500 at 9-10 and 6 record, I believe. And they had high hopes going into the season, but a lot of injuries had happened. Mitch Marner went down, and then obviously everybody's talking about the John Tavares being named captain for the Maple Leafs, but nobody on Long Island cares about that. What what we see right now is the fact that this Maple Leafs team, with so much offensive talent that they have, and with 4 guys signed over a max amount of year, the deal has been max amount of years, just about. Christian, what's gone on with the Maple Leafs, number one, and why did Babcock get fired?
I feel like that's kind of been in the works for a little while now, and I feel like you heard rumblings a little bit last year when there was a couple of turbulent weeks with the Maple Leafs, and this year again with everything going on up there, those kind of rumors started to heat up, and that speculation started to heat up. Babcock obviously came in under when Lou Lamoriello was still there as well, so maybe that was a contributing factor. And him and the new, management group up there weren't necessarily seeing eye to eye on certain things. It's an interesting case study. It's also a point where, if you're an Islander fan or if you're a hockey fan in general, it's a reminder that, hey, the best teams in the NHL aren't always the ones that have the most offensively potent players in the league. And the Toronto Maple Leafs is certainly a team that is offensively potent, but defensively, there's a lot of question marks. Obviously, they had to deal with a lot of injuries, and it's just a team that never really seemed to click, especially at the beginning of this season, which I think you saw those first couple of weeks. Even the game against the Islanders last week, you kind of saw that this is not a team that knows how to respond well when they get pushed around, and the Islanders are very good at doing that. A lot of hockey teams in this league are very good at doing that, pushing teams around. And I think if you look at some of the best in the league, they are teams that can throw the body around and they can hit and they can be a physical team, but they also know how to score goals. And it doesn't seem like the Maple Leafs really have that in them, and that's kind of that old school mentality. The Maple Leafs is sort of the kind of new school mentality, I guess. And the perfect mix seems to be somewhere right in the middle, and that just wasn't where the Maple Leafs are. I'm sure Islander fans are. I know you were just saying that no one cares, and especially about John Tavares, but I'm sure a few Islander fans smirked a little bit when they saw the news. And John Tavares, now having been the Maple Leaf for about a year and a couple months now has 2 head coaches. Maybe he goes through 3 head coaches by the time his career with the Maple Leafs ends. And when you look at his time on Long Island, he went through 3 head coaches in the span of 9 years with the Islanders. So he's over halfway there to the number of coaches he's had in Toronto as he had on Long Island in 9 years. So I'm sure there's a few Islander fans who will smirk at that.
Christian, so you look at the team, this year, they got off to the 1-3 start. And, obviously as fans of the team, like we start to panic. Oh my God, what's going on? In the last 15 games, they are 14-0-1. They have not lost a regulation game in 40 days. That is an outstanding stat. What do you contribute this streak to? Because it's certainly a streak that we haven't seen in a while, and we may not see for another while, regardless of sport. So this 14-0-1 streak, what do you think is the key reason why, or the key reasons why they have played so well the last 2.5, 3 weeks?
I think you look at the team, the Islanders, and the structure and the system that Barry Trotz put in place. Even those first couple games, it really wasn't – the Islanders weren't playing the Islanders style of hockey that they've become known under now, under the Barry Trotz era. And so they kind of got a little away from it those first couple games. And obviously, 3-4 games in and the team's not winning a whole bunch, people are always going to see the sky falling. But I think the sense around the Islanders dressing room and the sense around the team as a whole is that this is not a team that panics. They could go through a little bit of a stretch where things necessarily aren't going the way they'd hope, but at the same time, that's a team that knows that once they get going under their style of play, that they can beat anyone. And I think you've really seen that the last couple games, especially the comeback win in Philadelphia, the comeback win in Pittsburgh. Those are games where the Islanders maybe were getting outplayed a little bit in spurts here and there. They were still doing a lot of good things. And when they stick to their game plan, you see the payoff. You see them go from trailing 3-0 in the third period to, in the snap of a finger, it's a tie game. You see them trailing twice against Pittsburgh, a team, even without Sidney Crosby, very, very good and very, very talented. And Matt Murray, who was playing a heck of a game last night, even when they didn't seem like they could find the back of the net, they still managed to do that and mount that comeback and win in overtime. Those are 2 specific examples of just how this team, the structure and the system that Barry Trotz has put in place with this team now the last 2 years, the belief in that locker room, you get the sense that these guys never feel like they're out of the game. Even when they're down 3-0, it's a matter of, all right, let's just get one, and we'll just build off of that. And that's kind of what you heard after the game in Philadelphia, after the game last night. This is a team, once they get one going, they know, and even when they don't get one going, getting one in the net, they know that they can still mount a comeback. They're never out of the game. And I think that's really what's prevailed over the last couple of weeks, is that this is a team that's never doubted itself, even in those stretches where maybe things weren't going great. And this is a team that senses that once they get going, they are unbeatable, or I should say they can beat anybody, and they've shown that. They're winning games in overtime. They're winning games in regulation. They're winning games in the shootout. They're finding every which way possible to win games. They've done it over this 15-game span, and that is a miraculous thing to do, and especially considering the way this organization was viewed and this team has played in years past, where one or two things go wrong or they lose a couple games, and it just seems like things are collapsing from within. You just never get that sense now.
Absolutely not. Christian, there's one guy that I personally love seeing out in the ice, and that's Anthony Beauvillier. You look at his game, everybody's talking about the goals and everything like that coming into the year, how he's got to be so much more of a consistent player all around. Well, so far through this first quarter of the season, he's been the Islanders' most consistent player. If you take out the points and everything like that, you have a guy that goes out there and is a penalty killer. He's a relentless force on the ice, one of the fastest skaters on the team. I don't care what anybody says about Anthony Beauvillier. This guy is the absolute real deal. I mean, look at last night. The guy had a goal, and he had the game-winning assist to feed Brock Nelson. Who has been your player for the Islanders that has really come through and stepped up so far this season?
I think Beauvillier, especially in the last couple games, would fit that mold. He has really come into his own over the last couple games. You're seeing him play with much more confidence. You're seeing him really step up. I think defensively, too, you have to look at guys like Scott Mayfield, guys like that on the blue line who have really taken a major role. Adam Pelech has been huge for the Islanders during this run. Ryan Pulock, huge. Those two guys have been super consistent, and you're seeing that in Barry Trotz rewarding them with ice time, rewarding them with those guys being out there against some of the best players of the opposing team. And they've been so consistent. And when you look at the way they play, Adam Pelech, I did a story about him about a week ago, where you look at the way he's played. There was a stretch where he made some really big plays, and he always gets back defensively. He always steps up and is able to get back in time to break up a play or get in the passing lane or block a shot. Ryan Pulock is the same way. Scott Mayfield as well. Those guys also not afraid to throw their body when they can. And Matt Barzal. Barzal is leading the team in goals. Obviously, it's not a high-scoring team, this Islanders team here, but they know when to score goals. And Matt Barzal has been consistently impressive. You see him out there on the ice. He's creating opportunities, even if he's not the one putting in the back of the net. He is the one who's just dancing around defensive players in the offensive zone. So, I mean, those guys all have been extremely consistent for this Islanders team and contributed to why they are where they are right now.
Christian, and I kind of had a feeling Will was going to actually mention Villiers because I think people that listen to the show know that that is one of, if not Will's, favorite player on the team. And what I want to ask you is, during the off season, me and Will, we did shows and we had fans saying, "Oh, well, they got to go out and sign a big name. They got to go out and sign a big name." And they tried, but they were outbid by teams for Panarin and Duchesne, so on and so forth. I'm a type of guy that sometimes the best trade and the best thing is the one that you don't make. So, how much credit do you give Lou Lamoriello for staying the fort, trusting the guys that he has on this team, and not spending the big bucks to go out and add a big name? Because obviously, based on the season that we had last a season, this season we have huge expectations now. So, were you a guy that wanted to go out and see them sign like a big name, or are you happy that they stayed with the core, and now that they're off to this great start?
I was probably one of the people out there who would have liked to see the Islanders go out and get a top six forward. I was talking about it a lot last year early on too. It wouldn't hurt to have gone out and gotten a top six forward. I still don't think it would be the worst thing in the world if the Islanders went out and got a top six forward. Now that all being said, I think it was a mixture of Lamoriello having confidence in the roster that was coming back and the matter of circumstance. The matter of the fact is the Islanders did go out and try and get a top six forward. You mentioned Panarin, who obviously went to the New York Rangers. Duchesne, they made a play for as well. Things didn't pan out. So I think it was kind of a mixture of the two. Lamoriello saw a roster that he said, hey, this team did a lot last year, and I think some of the younger guys are going to step up and be able to mature this year, and you got to give them credit for that. And the other thing, too, is the fact that the Islanders just were outbid for top six guys, and that kind of forced their hand to say, hey, all right, we're going to go out and make a couple depth signings and, bring in a guy like Derek Brassard, who's turned out to be a little bit of a steal for the Islanders, especially moving to the wing. So I think Lamoriello deserves a little bit of credit, but there's also a little bit of luck in there, and the fact that, again, those certain top six guys that the Islanders had eyes for, even going back to the trade deadline, those things just didn't pan out for them. And sometimes, like you said, sometimes that is just the best thing. And for the Islanders, it kind of worked out this year.
Luck is where opportunity meets action, and where the Islanders are going out there and playing well. Last year, their power play unit was ranked almost nearly dead last, and now they're in the top 10 in power play percentage. Okay, Jim Hiller coming in has done an absolutely phenomenal job telling these guys, hey, just put the pucks on net, make the right plays, and go out there and see what happens. And right now they're doing that. And especially with guys like Derek Brassard coming in and, like you said, moving him from the center to the wing spot, he's lifted off. He's number 3 on the team in points overall. This is an absolutely unbelievable thing. And another thing, too, here to keep in mind, these young kids coming up and playing hard. Guys like Oliver Wahlstrom coming in playing hard. Guys like Noah Dobson on a night in and night out basis to a degree. Whenever he's not in the press box sitting in his nice suit, he goes out there and he has himself a nice game. He's building himself up to be something great. Otto Kovila, the other night, the past couple nights actually, he made his NHL debut after going up and down from Bridgeport. How these young kids have been unbelievable. In the absence of Leo Komarov, he came back. Matt Martin is on the shelf still, and Tom Kuhnackel. What's your take on the young kids from Bridgeport?
Yeah, no, I think that's something too that I completely forgot to even mention before when when Shawn asked me about the what's been going right for the Islanders during this 15-game stretch is that they've managed to just do all this despite all the injuries to some key guys. I mean, Komarov obviously is a huge part of the Islanders' penalty kill, which also has done very well this season. But you're right. A lot of these kids, they go into the lineup and they step up. Noah Dobson, has been able to learn and get better as he's progressed and he's gotten some chances to be in the lineup. Obviously, I'm very happy to see Otto Kovila get into the lineup in Philadelphia. That was a little bit of an exciting thing to see because you mentioned he's been up and down so much that you kind of felt bad. You kind of felt like at some point he should get there just because he's ridden the ferry so many times. But, I mean, I think it just goes back to the structure and the system that the Islanders have in place. And these guys know that this is an opportunity. And you never if you're a player, you never want to wish any injuries, but those guys know that this is their chance to make a mark and to kind of have an impact on this organization and make a mark in the eyes of Barry Trotz and Lou Lamoriello, because these are big games for the Islanders. These are games that they're going in and they're not just being thrown into little situations here and there, but they're getting opportunities. Noah Dobson is getting opportunities to play in some big spots. Koivu obviously only saw a few minutes his NHL debut, but still, to even get him out in a game like that is, when you're riding a streak that much and it's a divisional opponent, that's a big moment for you. And even just to play 7-8 minutes a game, that still means a lot. So I think these guys, they know that this is the chance for them to go in and make a mark, and they are taking it very seriously. And it's been able to help the organization as a whole because the Islanders continue to win games and they continue to pick up points. And you look at the fact that they haven't lost a regulation game since October 11th, and that is just astounding.
Oh, yeah, and especially, too, having guys like Cole Boudreau coming through and playing some fourth-line minutes with Casey Zizekas being down. Even Ross Johnston, the enforcer. He's been playing out of his mind,
they like I said, they are getting opportunities, they are getting chances, and they are taking advantage of them, which is a good thing and something you want to see. So for the Islanders, that's great.
Absolutely. Speaking of another thing, Christian, the two arena situation right now. The whole month of November, with the exception of last Wednesday at Nassau Coliseum, all the games are being played at Barclays. And sometime in December and even in a little bit of time in March, you'll probably see like maybe how many ever games are left at Barclays? Like
Right.
7 or 8 games left. Have the players at all like looked at it and said, you know what, hey, this two arena situation, it's really in our heads, instead of having to go out there and do that, or are they just ignoring that whole concept?
I think it's really just a matter of just playing with whatever's going on. I mean, the Islanders have to play at the arena they're scheduled to play at. I mean, they have no choice, and I think that the guys know that, and they're just going, hey, whether it's Nassau Coliseum, whether it's Barclays Center, we have to go out there and we have to execute our game, and we just have to play. I think that discussion of they're playing this game here or they're playing that game there, it's just it's that there's nothing they can do about it, and I don't think they're harping on it. Kind of like the way they're approaching this win streak. It's just they need to go out, they need to play their game, and they need to find a way to win. And that's really it. Doesn't matter whether they're playing at Barclays, Nassau Coliseum, on the road somewhere else. It's just both teams have to play on the same ice, and they have to find a way to win. So I don't think anyone's really concerned about the fact that they are playing these games at one arena or the other arena, that they're bouncing back and forth. I think they've kind of been the beneficiaries of a bit of helpfulness in their schedule as far as being able to play a majority of games at the Nassau Coliseum early this month. They really haven't had to travel between the two arenas other than the one game at the Nassau Coliseum against the Maple Leafs. So they've been able to also get a little bit of comfort from playing in one arena for a little bit and then going to another arena for a little bit and then coming back to another arena for a little bit. That won't be the whole case the whole season, but that certainly helped too.
Christian, what I want to ask you is to get to you for a second now. Like Will said, you contribute to the AP and the radio, and you're doing your own thing. Is there a particular event, thing, sport that you like to cover the most, or is it almost like you're like a kid in a candy store because you have like like the best of everything in terms of things that you do. So tell the fans of the show, when it comes to you, like what do you enjoy doing the most based on everything that you do?
Yeah, no, it's a good question. I obviously hockey is my bread and butter, so I obviously love doing that the most as far as the four major sports. But I do love kind of going to get out of my comfort zone a little bit. For instance, over the summer I did the U.S. Open, which was something I really had only been to as a spectator once in my life. So being able to do that and cover one of the biggest tournaments in that sport in the U.S. Open is something that's exciting. I used to work for a newspaper in Pennsylvania. I used to cover dirt track racing of all things, which was a total change of pace for a kid who grew up on Long Island and had never seen seen one NASCAR race in his life. It's a whole different world out there. So to go out there and cover something that's completely out of my comfort zone was scary, obviously at first, but I loved every second of it because it was such a change of pace and it's such a different kind of culture you're immersed in that it makes it fun. Hockey is my favorite sport, but I think the best advice I could give to someone trying to break into this field or even wants to do this as a hobby is just kind of make yourself versatile. Don't make yourself a one-trick pony. Get out and cover hockey if you love hockey, but make sure you kind of try something else a little bit. Write about some baseball. Write about basketball. Write about something that's out of your comfort zone, and then don't even just write about it. Try doing your hand at a podcast or radio or something on YouTube with video. Don't make yourself this person that can just do one thing when, especially in today's day and age, you need to know about 3 different things. And companies want you to know how to do a podcast, but they also want you to know how to write, and they want you to know how to do a little video. And I think a lot of people know how to do that instinctively, but I think just make sure you're versatile and just have fun with it. I mean, I try not to get too jaded, and I'll admit there are certain games, especially when it comes to hockey, where you're there and you're like, all right, I've been through this a million times, and you kind of forget how fun it is, or how extraordinary it would be for someone else. And then you talk to a fan, or you talk to someone who's trying to break into the industry, and they go, "Oh, you got to talk to Anders Lee? That's awesome!" And it kind of reminds you, it keeps you humble, where you don't forget that this is someone else's dream job, and that you're kind of getting to live out something that not many people do.
Absolutely, man. Absolutely. Well said. Well said, Christian. Uh, you know, before we end with the Islanders here, Chris,
Mm-hmm.
you know, after tomorrow's game against the Penguins, they go out on a West Coast trip and they play up against San Jose and Anaheim and Los Angeles before they come back the following Saturday at Barclays against the Columbus Blue Jackets. Do you see any sort of somewhat of a concern here for this team moving forward? Because I mean, listen, last year when they went out to the West Coast, they went 1-2 in California, and the one win came up against the Kings, and we know that the Kings are terrible. We know that. And the last time that they got a win was back in 2003 in Los Angeles. So do you see like this team like building themselves up here in a sense, because this is a really, really important road trip, and they haven't been out on the road that much?
Yeah, I think they understand the importance of this swing, but I don't necessarily know if I would agree that they are amping themselves up any more than they would for any other game. Like I said, one of the key things about this team's success, even in the face of their 15-game point streak, is just that every game is just another game. Every game is, you focus on that one game, you don't get too far ahead of yourself, you game plan for that opponent, and that's your main task at hand. You're not thinking, we're going out west and we got to play San Jose or we got to play LA and they're terrible, so we should get that win. And you're thinking past them. You're thinking, okay, you're respecting your opponent. You're focused on that one opponent you have in front of you. So for the Islanders right now, they're focused again on Pittsburgh as they wrap up this home and home. And then once Pittsburgh wraps up, then they'll focus on their next opponent. This is a team that their eye is not on 10 games in front of them. Their eye is on that next opponent.
Right.
I think that's what's been so crucial to their success, and I think if you ask a lot of the players, they'd say the same thing. It's that one-track focus that keeps them mentally in the zone so that they're not getting distracted by 15-game point streaks. They're not getting distracted by John Tavares' rematch game. They're not getting distracted by another rivalry game against the Pittsburgh Penguins. They are focused on one opponent. They're not focused on the outside noise, and that's one of the big things that Lou Lamoriello and Barry Trotz and Anders Lee as the captain have preached as far as the culture in that locker room, and I think that's what makes that room so successful this year, last year, and I think that's why when you look at a West Coast swing where obviously there's been some struggles, no doubt, there isn't really a concern in the back of your mind like, wow, they only beat LA last year or this or that. It's just they're going to go in there, they're going to treat it like a business mentality, and their concern is not who they're playing 2-3 games down the line. Their opponent, their main focus is that one opponent coming up, and I think that's what should be taken into account, and I think that's what will make them successful the rest of the year. And I'm not concerned about this West Coast road trip. I think they'll approach it with that same mentality, and I would predict they're coming home with a couple points. They might not, that 15-game point streak might not last until that West Coast swing, or maybe it does, but they're going to come home with a couple points over that swing.
Go ahead, Shawn.
Christian, and the funny thing is about like speaking of teams going from the East Coast to the West Coast to the East Coast, just in terms of the division and in the conference that they are in. I know it's too early to tell. It's probably too early to tell, especially with Sidney Crosby being hurt. But if there is a team that a team or teams that you think down the line can give them trouble, or a team that may contend with them in terms of the division or in terms of the conference, I'm sure the obvious response is going to be Washington or Pittsburgh if they get healthy, so on and so forth. But
Right.
is there a team or teams that even though it's too early to tell, that potentially, if you were the Islanders, may put a fear in you when it comes to March, April, May, June, so on and so forth?
I do, actually. I would imagine that it's going to be, if I had to put money on a team, it would be Carolina. Obviously, they swept them in the playoffs. The Carolina Hurricanes swept the Islanders in the playoffs last year. But, I mean, that is a team that has historically given the Islanders fits for whatever reason, even when they weren't great. But now this is a very good, talented offensive team that plays a two-way game. They're a fast team. They play very similar to the Islanders, and I think that's what makes them so tough, is they have a little bit more speed than the Islanders, and you saw that last year in the playoffs, and I think you even saw a little bit of that earlier in that October 11th 5-2 loss to Carolina that the Islanders suffered early in the season. I think that's the one team that always has given them trouble. They play such a similar style as the Islanders that the Islanders kind of have a hard time matching up against that. And like I said, they have a lot of speed. So when you kind of take all of that into account, that's the team that always seems to give the Islanders fits and always seems to give them issues, especially late in the year, especially in the playoffs last year. That would be the team, if I had to put money on that, I would keep my eye out for the Islanders, because that's a team that, as entertaining a series that may be, that would be another tough series. That's going to be another tough matchup down the line, and especially since they both play in the same division now.
Christian, to move on from the Islanders to the other two New York teams, talking about the Rangers, and even though they don't play in New York, the Devils, they're still in the tri-state area. What's been your so far through the first quarter of the season? What's your take on the Rangers and the Devils so far this year?
Yeah, the Rangers, I think people got a little too ahead of themselves, or some people, I should say, got a little too ahead of themselves after the Rangers went out and got Panarin and they got Trouba. There was kind of this expedited thought now of their rebuild, and I think the Rangers are kind of where you would expect them to be. They are a rebuilding team. They just picked second overall in the NHL draft. They weren't going to be better overnight. Maybe I think people thought they'd be a little better than they are now, but it's a team that's developing. It's a team that's trying to figure out what their next move is for the next couple of years as far as direction of the franchise and how they develop their talent. So I would have imagined the Rangers are exactly where I thought they were, and I think too people got a little bloated expectations after the Rangers won their first two games out of the gate, but then they had that weird kind of schedule where they were off for like a week or something like that. And they had such a long extended break between games, things kind of fell apart. And I think the Rangers kind of came back to earth to who you thought they would be. The Devils are an interesting team. They are a team that has a lot of talent. They have a lot of opportunity as far as that talent providing, but their ability to play defense in their own zone at times has hurt them. Their goaltending isn't great. It's really an interesting thing because the Devils could be a very good team. Obviously, they have PK Subban, Wayne Simmons is there. They have Travis Zajac, who recently scored after going dry for a while. Mm-hmm. That's a team that has talent.
Taylor Hall.
For whatever reason, they've just had such a weird stretch to start the year. They just haven't been able to click, and maybe you're starting to see it come around a little bit recently. You saw them get the win on Friday and Saturday night. Mm-hmm. It's a team that's starting to maybe come around and click a little bit more, but I mean that's an interesting team because, like I said, they have a lot of talent, but for whatever reason, I think part of it's obviously their goaltending is not great, and they didn't really have a goaltending going into the year, so it shouldn't come as too much of a surprise, I guess, that it's really been their Achilles heel. But I mean, it's a team that's blown a lot of leads. They've struggled to win at home. So it's just been a weird start to the year. I think I myself expected them to be a lot better than they have been so far this year. So it's an interesting mix. Maybe they're starting to turn a corner. Maybe they'll, if anything, I could see them maybe competing for the wild card if it comes down to a team that starts to click a little bit more. But I mean, even kind of throwing Corey Schneider on waivers the other day was a bit of a surprise.
It was.
It's an interesting team. It's an interesting team that kind of things have just kind of not worked out, I think, the way a lot of people thought, myself included.
Absolutely, and the Devils right now are tied in points with the Rangers at 18 apiece, and they trail the second place wild card Philadelphia Flyers by 6 points. So nothing is ever out of the realm of possibility in the NHL because you never know with all the puck luck and everything like that happens in the games. One good bounce or a couple of good games here and there can really kickstart someone's season, as you said. You mentioned talented teams, and you mentioned, teams in general. Who has been the surprise team so far this year in the NHL for you, Christian? Because there are a lot of great stories so far this young NHL year.
Yeah, I mean, New Jersey would be a surprise just because of the fact that they are tied with the Rangers. I mean, they have almost identical records, I think, over the last 10 games or something like that. Mm-hmm. But I think, obviously, the Islanders being where they were, I know a lot of people were getting on some of the experts about where they picked the Islanders this season, I would have said to them, to the people getting upset about it, I mean, it was hard to imagine them finding a way to replicate what they did last season. So far, they've managed to do that. I think, when you kind of look at everything, Buffalo, even the first month or so of the season, they were hot, and they looked like a team that maybe finally, as an organization, turned the corner and we're going to be really competitive this year. And things have kind of dipped off a little bit. But Buffalo was another surprising team where I don't think I saw them coming out as hot as they did this year, and they've managed to kind of turn things around. So obviously not recently, but they did have a pretty good start to the year. Pittsburgh, I guess being as good as Pittsburgh is, they've been, I guess, a little more mediocre than you would have expected. I think that's kind of a bit of a surprise because you always just assume that Washington, Pittsburgh teams are just going to be right up there, regardless of who's in the lineup, who's not in the lineup, regardless of how old Sidney Crosby is. They are always there, which is a true testament to those two organizations and the depth that they've built. So I think those are some of your early season surprises, for me at least, around the NHL.
Tell you one surprise, man, that really, really just they haven't looked right so far this whole season is the Lightning. I mean, with all the talent that's in place there, Christian, you see what's going on down there. A lot of people pick them to make it to the Stanley Cup, and right now, like I said, it's early. I get it. I totally understand it, but it's just unbelievable what they're going through, and the same thing can be said with Toronto as well. And that's only in the Eastern Conference. In the West,
right,
you still had the Blues in first place after they won the Cup last year. Edmonton, of all teams,
right.
Edmonton is in first with Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl leading the way over there. And, Dallas and Vancouver, Calgary had the best record last year. They're sitting out of the playoff picture right now. But out of the West, man, who has been like a surprise for you out of the West?
Yeah, no, I think I would probably have to peg Edmonton. I mean, that is a team I perennially will just count off. And just whatever, they'll be interesting because they have Connor McDavid, but I never imagined they'll be as good as they are. Even Arizona, you look at the Coyotes,
yeah,
they have been equally as impressive. I mean, that's an organization everyone almost forgets exists.
Yes.
In general.
Yes. New ownership too.
What's that?
New ownership too for the Coyotes.
That's right. So that's obviously helped them as an organization kind of stabilize a little bit, and then you also have Phil Kessel out there now.
Yeah.
Which I'm sure definitely doesn't hurt if you're the Arizona Coyotes, and they have a pretty good talented roster out there that people kind of forget exists. So I think that's also, you're right, that's a bit of a surprise that you have two teams in the Pacific Division that 1-2 are two teams that everyone counts out almost automatically now, considering how bad Edmonton has been over the last couple of years and how almost non-existent the Coyotes have been in the last couple of years. So,
right.
And even to your point too about St. Louis, that's a team that any team coming off a Stanley Cup championship, you always kind of expect a little bit of a hangover, and you just don't really seem to have seen that so far, which is a bit surprising.
Right. I mean, outside of the Nassau Coliseum game, but we'll leave that off there for a second. The California teams, though, have been kind of sort of somewhat putrid so far. The first quarter of the season, San Jose has been non-existent, really. Los Angeles, everybody expecting to be down in the dumps, really. And the Anaheim Ducks, losing out on a couple of their stalwarts over there, and now they're out. They're on the picture looking out. You also too you have the Nashville Predators, another team that's looking out right now.
Right, that's another surprise. I mean, that's a team that's perennially a contender out there in the West the last couple of years.
Yeah.
That's also a bit surprising.
Yep. So, and even Robin Leonard too, having the season that he's having out with Chicago right now, they're right there in the thick of things too. But real quick, Christian. Okay, to circle back to the Islanders here a little bit. Okay, trading deadline is going to come around very, very soon. It's not until February, March, but it'll be here soon enough. Okay.
Yep.
If you had to put on your tinfoil hat for a second, all right. If you had to put on your tinfoil hat and make a prediction, who would the Islanders go out there and get? Because I listened to a lot of podcasts, referring the Islanders and reading in on a lot of stuff, blogs. Everybody's talking about a top 6 winger. Maybe Tyler Toffoli comes over here from Los Angeles. Do you see them making a move, or do you see them like just staying the course with this team right now?
I think the way it's positioned and the way, just from the way Lamoriello talks, the Islanders don't make a move unless that Lou Lamoriello feels that this is a move that's going to make the team better. Not that it's going to be kind of lip service, or that it's just going to be a move to make a move. That's just not their style. It's not going to be one that's kind of doesn't make the team better or worse. It's just a trade. I think the Islanders will go out and make a move if they really feel that they can make a move that'll make a difference. And for every year, the Islanders kind of approach that and they try and maybe fall. But I don't know. I don't think that Lou is going to be too heavy-handed in trying to make a move this year. I think if things kind of stay the course, I mean, is there going to be a player on the market that's going to make you that much better than the Islanders potentially could be when we hit February or March? That's really going to be the question. Is there a player on the market that's going to make them significantly better than what they are at that moment? That's going to be the big key. If there's a player out there, maybe a Toffoli, maybe that moves the needle for Lamoriello. But it's really going to come down to that question. And when we get to February, March, that's when we'll kind of get an answer of what the Islanders will or won't do. Is there a player out there that's going to make them better, significantly better than they are at that moment? If it's yes, then you got to give Lou Lamoriello the benefit of the doubt. He's going to go out there with everything he has, and he's going to try and make a move. If there's not a player out there, then it's going to be the Islanders roster you see at that moment before the deadline is going to be the one you see after the deadline. It's so hard to say because Lamoriello plays his cards so close to his chest, and I'm not trying to dodge your question, but
I know
that's just the reality of it. It's such a kind of tight-lipped operation now, especially with Lamoriello at the helm. That's just the sense I get, is that if there's a player that's really going to make this team better, they'll try and make a move. But other than that, they're going to kind of keep things status quo if they feel that that's the best move for them.
Absolutely, man. We've come to know this for about a year and a half now with Lou and Barry running the organization over here, and right now they're doing some great things. Christian, how do the people follow you on social media, man?
You can follow me at C_Arnold01 on Twitter, and follow my Instagram page too. It's a lot of nonsense, but I think you'll get a kick out of it. It's Christian Arnold 92 on Instagram. Dude,
you post some great content, man, on the gram. Going out there, seeing you taking photos and everything like that of the Coliseum and wherever you may be, man. It's truly an awesome time talking hockey with you, Christian. I really do appreciate you coming on to the show, man. Definitely got to come in studio, and you're welcome back on to talk hockey
100%.
with us.
I'm going to take you up on that offer.
Absolutely, man. Can't wait. Can't wait to talk hockey with you, bro. It's been an awesome time. Thank you for coming on and sacrificing some of your time to come talk with us.
Problem. Happy to do it, and thank you for saying that you enjoy my Instagram content, because I am never sure if anyone just finds it entertaining or obnoxious.
I like it. I like it. What more can you say? What more can you say?
Well, thank you.
No problem, bud. Thank you for coming on to the show, bud. Really appreciate that.
Thank you, pal.
Yeah, no problem. Enjoy your birthday, Shawn. Have a good one, man.
I appreciate you, man. Thank you so much.
All right, guys. Take care.
Thank you. That was the one and only Christian Arnold from the Associated Press, talking Islanders and Rangers, Devils, and all around hockey. I loved it. Shawn, what did you think about it?
Well, man, Christian is awesome with a capital A, and well, nothing surprises me when you book a guest, because they always kill it. So, once again, my wonderful co-host, awesome job by you, Christian, was awesome, and really gave us some pretty good an insight. Really, gave us some, honest and thoughtful views, and not only the Islanders but the Tri-State. Even though those are two teams I really care for, but hey,
right.
He still broke down the season that they are having so far. So
yep.
Obviously he's a fan like me and you. So
yep,
we shall see.
All righty. Any final thoughts on this episode, bud?
No. Well, just we'll see how the rest of this homestand goes before they hit the road, like you said, and we'll just take it from there.
Absolutely, man. Hey, they're going to be going out on the road after this Thursday, going up against San Jose Saturday, Anaheim on Monday, and then on Thanksgiving Eve they go up against the Los Angeles Kings at Staples Center. So lots to talk about, but Who knows? We'll see what happens. Maybe they keep their point streak going. Maybe not. That's why they play the game, Shawn. But right now, let's enjoy the good times. All right? I have no final thoughts outside of that. And on that note, for everybody here at Gotham Podcast Studios, for the wonderful Matt Peters, we didn't introduce him today. We did not introduce him. I know. He's shaking his head. I know. Come on, Will. Listen, I know. Just wanted to give Matt his due, the owner of Gotham Podcast Studios. And for everybody here at Gotham and for Christian Arnold from the Associated Press, I just want to thank him for coming on. And happy birthday, Shawn, by the way. I know I've been mentioning it on social media and texting you and everything like that, but now I'm talking it out. I'm speaking it into existence. Happy birthday, bud. 31 and fun.
Well, I appreciate you. Thank you for the social media post. And I love you like a fat kid loves cake, Will.
Wow. That's a first. Never heard that one before about me. Maybe we should do some more. No, I'm kidding. On that note, I'm your host, Will Chiarucci, logging out. We will talk to you guys soon. Peace out. Shawn, I'm going to call you back, all right?
All right, baby. Cool.